Hello my dear students, I am Jyothi Ganesh. Welcome all of you to the second episode of Dhurandhar, the final revision with regard to economics current affairs to help you in your Civil Services Preliminary Examination 2026. This series is an honest and humble effort to comprehensively bring you economics current affairs of last 12 months by analyzing the previous year questions of UPSC and stitching it to the needs of UPSC Prelims examination. If you have not watched the previous episode, kindly go back and watch it. I am sure spending 6 to 7 hours of your time for revising your economics current affairs will definitely help you at least to answer 2 to 3 economics current affairs based questions or even more to eliminate wrong options in those questions which you are not familiar with. So if I could recollect the topics that we have seen in the previous episode, there we touched upon very high priority topics like important features of MMDR Act, rare earth elements, critical minerals and few of the uses of those critical minerals, following which we discussed about macroeconomic federalism topics like finance commission, GST, also certain aspects regarding digital economy like stable coins, etc. In the current episode, we are again touching upon very important topics with regard to infrastructure, logistics, industry and labor codes and certain current affairs aspects regarding agriculture. Shall we proceed? Firstly, we'll take up infrastructure and logistics ecosystem related current affairs. So, Vizhinjam International Transshipment Port was in the news, right? So, what is the meaning of transshipment? Transshipment means if the ship vessels had to, exchange the goods from one ship to another ship, that is called transshipment, right? So, not all the ports will have transshipment facility. Rather, it is India's first international transshipment port. Vizhinjam is the India's first international transshipment port located in Tirunanthapuram of Kerala, where our famous Shashi Tharoor comes from. Right. So, there are certain important aspects regarding this transshipment port. First thing is, it is been inaugurated in 2nd of May 2025. Of course, the date won't be asked in your exam. It is been built in the PPP mode with the model DBFOT model. There are so many PPP models like BOT model, hybrid annuity model, etc. Likewise, this Vizhinjam International Transshipment Port has been built under DBFOT model. What is that? Design, build, finance, operate and transfer. So, the private participant will design, build, finance and operate till it procures all the investment and then it will transfer the ownership to the government, right? Also, in complement with landlord model, both DBFOT as well as landlord models were applied in this particular project. So, what is the meaning of landlord model? Government owns the land, but the private entity operates the project. Here, the private entity is Adani Ports. Got it? One more aspect of it is, it is the greenfield port, means the port built from the scratch. You know what is greenfield project and what is brownfield project, right? So, built from the scratch by Kerala state government. So, my dear friends, there are two kinds of ports, major and non-major or minor ports. So, major ports comes under direct control of central government and the minor ports comes under direct control of state government. So, Vizhinjam International Airport, though the name says it is International Transshipment Port, it is a minor port. It is built by Kerala state government. Remember this. And one more important aspect, it is first semi-automated and AI-enabled port in India. So, there are other aspects also. It has got good amount of depth. If the port has good amount of depth, it can handle larger ships. That is why it is the first port in India which can handle ultra large container ships. Ultra large container ships, the ships with regard to the size, right? Also, it is a natural harbor. That is why it requires minimal dredging. Dredging means clearing the bottom of the sea, like to make sure the ships are properly anchored in the port. So, it requires minimal dredging. So, how is it going to help? See, 75% of India's cargo was routed via Colombo port of Sri Lanka, Singapore port and Port Klang of Malaysia. So these were the ports were utilized for transshipment of India's ships. So now, since we have our very own international transshipment port, we can utilize and we can compete with all these nearby transshipment ports. That is one economical advantage. So if you see the location of the port, it is located at a very strategic place in between the major sea trade routes, that is the trade route coming from Suez Canal to Bab al Mandab Strait and Indian Ocean, passing through Strait of Malacca. It is one of the busiest sea trade routes in the world, as well as where Strait of trade coming from Strait of Hormuz. Can you see this? So it plays a very important economical role due to its strategic location. Right? That's about Vizhinjam port. So, my dear friends, UPSC is fond of asking questions regarding ports. So, you must know which are the major ports. So, currently we have 12 major ports in India which are operational. And there are other 2 major ports which have been sanctioned but not yet operational. So, which are they? One is Galatia Bay Port of Andaman and Nicobar Island, and one more is Vadhavan Port in Palghar region of Maharashtra. So rest of the 12 major ports you must know which comes along the east coast and which comes along the west coast, and major or important aspects of these major ports. Right? These have been asked many times in the previous year exams, and you cannot say that okay, it's a old question. No, UPSC might repeat the same question because port is always in the news. We are always talking about port-led economical growth, right? We talk about blue economy. There, the major port question still holds good, right? So next important current affairs topic with regard to ports is Indian Ports Act of 2025 that has been enacted recently. It replaces the colonial Indian Ports Act of 1908. So let us see what are the important features of this act with regard to UPSC Prelims examination. So again, it replaced 117-year-old Act of Indian Port Act 1908. So what are the core objectives? Objectives may be for your mains, not for prelims. So modern legal framework for all ports in India, promote coastal and port-led development, improve port efficiency, safety, global competitiveness. These are very generic things which I think you were able to write. But for prelims, it gives statutory status for Maritime State Development Council. Maritime State Development Council was already there. Remember, this new act does not establish any new State Development Council, Maritime State Development Council, but it gives statutory status to this. Earlier, it was existent as an executive body. Now, the new act gives statutory status to the Maritime State Development Council. So, don't get confused. State Development Council doesn't mean that it will be established in every state, but it is at the national level, right? It is meant to coordinate between the states and different stakeholders of the port development, and to suggest national perspective plan for port development. It is responsible to design national perspective plan for port development, right, with coordination with different stakeholders, which includes state and other ministries, right? So that's what its role is, to coordinate policies, promote port-led growth. One other important thing is this council will be chaired by Union Ports Minister, Union Ministry of Port, Shipping and Waterways. Union Port Minister will be the chairman of the council, followed by all the member states. The concerned ministries of the member coastal states also will be there, along with the representatives from Navy and Coast Guard. Right? Sometimes the composition of the council also might be asked. At least the chairman. At least you must remember the chairman name. Now, second thing is it gives statutory backing for state maritime boards. state maritime boards. Again, state maritime boards also, they are also existent with all the coastal states. All the coastal states have state maritime boards except Goa. Goa doesn't have state maritime board, right? But this state maritime board did not have recognition in the central law. Now this new Indian Ports Act recognizes these state maritime boards as a legal entity. That means this SMP is also given statutory backing under the new act. So what do these SMBs do? They regulate and develop non-major ports at the state level. State maritime boards, they help in regulating and developing non-major ports. As I told you, minor ports comes under the state list and major ports comes under the central list. Got it? So state maritime boards also responsible for fixing tariffs for non-major ports. Fixing tariff for non-major ports. Now you may ask, sir, who is going to fix tariff for major ports? Every major port has a major port authority established by law. Every major port has a major port authority established by law. So that authority will be responsible for fixing tariffs. Understood? But the minor ports, it will be state maritime boards of the respective states which are going to decide on tariffs. Right. So other important aspects, when you talk about dispute resolution, right, states must set up dispute resolution committees. So to settle the disputes with regard to minor ports, every state must set up dispute resolution committee. So how about major ports? Dispute resolution with respect to major ports will be decided by Major Port Authority Board. The respective Major Port Authority, the board of the Major Port Authority will decide the disputes. So there is no separate dispute resolution committee for major ports. Got it? So the Act proposes to establish dispute resolution committees to settle disputes with regard to minor ports. Right. One more thing, civil courts have no jurisdiction in settling disputes either in the major ports as well as minor ports. Civil courts have no jurisdiction. So they have to get their dispute settled in the dispute resolution committee with respect to minor ports. With respect to major ports, the Major Port Authority Board will decide upon the disputes. If they are not satisfied, they have to directly approach High Court. So civil court have absolutely no jurisdiction with respect to deciding the disputes with regard to major port as well as minor port, right? So again, you can appeal High Court within 60 days. I don't think these final details will be asked in the prelims, right? And one more very, very important thing, the Act mandates certain environment and safety standards to be maintained by every port. First is MARPOL Convention. It is mandatory for every port to adhere to the standards of MARPOL Convention. So what is MARPOL Convention? The convention which talks about preventing pollutions from ships. Preventing pollution from ships. For example, sewage waste, right? Ship wastages, oil spillage, etc. So this convention talks about, prevention of pollution from ships. So the ports must take care of handling such wastages. That's about MARPOL Convention. The second convention talks about is Ballast Water Management Convention. The ports have to take care of handling, adhering to the standards set by MARPOL Convention as well as Ballast Water Management Convention. So what is ballast water? See, so for any ship to maintain its balance, some water will be pumped into the ship to maintain the balance, right? In the voyage of the ship, some fresh water or even sea water will be pumped into the ship. If such sea water which was pumped into the ship, if it is emptied in the shore or near the coastal areas, what happens? Some bacteria which are alien to the coastal areas, they might enter the coastal area. Some bacteria or some invasive species of plants or microbes, they might enter the coastal area and they might create some unwarranted pollution or unwarranted impact on the coastal ecosystem. So this Ballast Water Management Convention talks about reducing that effect, treating the ballast water. Got it? So two conventions every port must adhere to. So that's about the Indian Ports Act 2025. One more news regarding the port, that is large ships are given with infrastructure status. So we keep on hearing about different sectors given the status of infrastructure. So what does it actually mean? Finance Ministry of Finance maintains a list which is called Infrastructure Harmonized Master List. Infrastructure Harmonized Master List. So whenever a project or a sector given infrastructure status, that will be added to the harmonized master list maintained by the Finance Ministry. So what is the advantage of adding to the infrastructure status? Major advantage is these sectors will be eligible for long-term loans as well as external commercial borrowings, as well as viability gap funding and other tax incentives. So government picks and chooses certain important areas, important sectors which would require long-term loans, right? So they are highly prioritized. So such sectors will be put into harmonized master list maintained by Finance Ministry. So if they are put under that infrastructure status, they will get these benefits: long-term loans, access to external commercial borrowings, viability gap funding given by the government, as well as tax incentives, right? That's about infrastructure status. So currently the large ships have been given with infra status. So what is the meaning of large ship? May not be asked, but you never know. So a large ship, there are two definitions for large ship. If the ship has to be recognized as a large ship, it has to meet either of the two conditions. First condition is if it is Indian owned and international vessel, it is made from foreign country or foreign national, but it is owned by an Indian. For that ship, the gross tonnage should be more than 10,000. Gross tonnage means the capacity which it can carry. If it is an international ship but owned by Indian, the gross tonnage should be more than 10,000. Then only it is called large ship. Also, Indian flag. Indian flag means it should be registered in India. The second condition is if it is built as well as owned by India. If it is built in India as well as owned by an Indian, also registered in India, that means carrying Indian flag. For that ship, the gross tonnage value is relatively lesser. It will be equal to or greater than 1,500 gross tonnage. Very small threshold. So for any ship to qualify as a large ship, one of these two conditions should be met. That's about infra status to large ships. So while we are talking about ships and ports, you can also connect this with maritime Amritkal vision. Amritkal vision of 2047. So which talks about making India as a global maritime leader by 2047 by modernizing the ports, by improving shipbuilding industry, as well as improving logistical efficiency, right? So you may know this to be on safer side. Next, we'll move on to other infrastructure related current affairs topic, that is IRGF fund, Infrastructure Risk Guarantee Fund. So what are the important aspects about this fund? So again, it is announced in the current budget 2026-2027. So how the government is going to fund infra projects? So earlier government was merely a debt or a loan giver, right? So the government used to sanction loans and it used to expect the EMIs or the interest to be paid on time. But the role of the government now has been changed. So now government shifts from direct funder to the risk sharer. So under this fund, what government does is it provides partial credit guarantee on the infra loans. It does not directly provide the loan, rather it acts as a guarantee provider to the loans taken by the infra projects. So not for the entire money, maybe around 20 to 30% of the loan taken by infra projects will be guaranteed by the government. So that portion of the loan will have sovereign guarantee. So what will be the impact of this? those projects will readily attract the long-term loans, right? So banks will never hesitate because some part of the loan is guaranteed by the government itself. So there is less chance of giving bankruptcy or less chance of turning this loan to be a bad asset. So banks will come forward to lend for longer term, as well as the interest rate also will be reduced. Long-term loans must be given with negotiable interest rate. Since earlier the projects were not to be trusted or riskier, of course in India infra projects are riskier because of the time it is going to take to complete the project. So government comes to rescue such projects by becoming a partial guarantor of the loan. So that will reduce the interest rate given by the banks. That will also help banks to provide long-term loans, as well as it will also improve the credit rating of the loan. It will also improve the credit rating of the loan. So that will in turn boost the infrastructure. So how much fund? Earlier it is nearly 1000 crore fund has been put as seed fund. May not be important for your prelims. Since government is the partial guarantor of the loan, that means the credit rating of the loan will become almost equal to the sovereign rating, right? That means improved credit rating. That reduces the borrowing cost and risk of the project also will be less. That will help PFRDA and IRDA fund, that is our pension funds as well as insurance funds, right? So they can invest in these projects. So these funds will become eligible to invest in these projects. In other words, since these infra projects have sovereign backing and improved credit rating, they can tap into pension funds as well as insurance funds of the government. So these are the advantages of IRGF fund. So next we'll talk about some important trains that have been recently launched. So your prelims examination have tendency of asking the train name and whatever the purpose and when it has been launched, etc. So first among that is Namo Bharat train. Namo Bharat, don't get confused this with Vande Bharat. Vande Bharat is different, Namo Bharat is different. So Namo Bharat is, it's RRTS train, that is Regional Rapid Transit System. It is regional train. Namo Bharat, Regional Rapid Transit System, right? So it is implemented by NCR Transport Corporation. NCR means your National Capital Region, that is Delhi. NCR Transport Corporation is the development agency. That the range of operation of this train is 100 to 250 kilometer. Remember, I told you this regional train, that means intercity. It doesn't travel across states, right? It is operational range is 100 to 250 kilometer only. So currently the proposed train is operating between Delhi, Ghaziabad and Meerut, in and around Delhi. Delhi, Ghaziabad and Meerut. Don't forget, Namo Bharat is different from Vande Bharat. Again, this is not a high-speed rail. This is not a high-speed rail because it is intercity, right? It is to decongest the traffic between the major cities around Delhi. Okay, so the speed is not more than 100 km, or you can say average speed is 100 km per hour, maximum is 160. So I don't think they will ask about the speed and all, but you should remember that this is not a high-speed rail. They can just tell you that, okay, Namo Bharat is a high-speed rail. No, it is not a high-speed rail. Okay, and what are the features, what are the facilities given and all? No need to worry about that. One more important train, that is Rudrastra. Rudrastra, it is a freight train. It is not a passenger train, it is a freight train. Important aspect is, it is India's longest freight train. Very lengthy. How much length? 4.5 kilometer. Can you imagine? 4.5 kilometer long, the freight train, that is Rudrastra. Understood? It has 354 wagons connected with each other. Also, it has 7 engines. I don't think UPSC will ask engines and wagons. At least you must know it is the longest freight train of length nearly 4.5 kilometer. So, is it only confined to dedicated freight corridors? No. It also uses normal tracks because our dedicated freight corridors have to still evolve. That's all. This can be a trap for you. Fine. And one more aspect or news regarding the train. There is new Dankuni and Surat Dedicated Freight Corridor has been proposed in the current budget, right? 2026-27 budget proposes new dedicated freight corridor between Dankuni, that is in West Bengal, to Surat, that is in Gujarat. So let us see. So this red line that you are seeing, that is your Eastern Dedicated Freight Corridor, and the blue line is your Western Dedicated Freight Corridor. If you talk about Eastern DFC, it runs from Ludhiana to Dankuni, Ludhiana of Punjab to Dankuni of West Bengal. And when you talk about Western Dedicated Freight Corridor, it runs from Dadri of UP to GNPT, Port Trust of Maharashtra. The recently proposed Dedicated Freight Corridor is going to connect Eastern and Western DFCs. That is, it is going to connect Surat and Dankuni. So, the proposed new DFC is going to connect both Eastern DFC as well as Western DFC. So, is there anything else important about this is? So, this track is going to support double stack trains. You know, double stack, one wagon over another, double stack, right? So, it is going to support double stack trains, speed up to 100 km per hour. So, one more important aspect is it is going to connect mineral rich eastern part of the country with industrially developed western part of the country. I don't think these minor things will be asked, but you must remember the Dankuni and Surat DFC is going to connect Western DFC along with Eastern DFC. You may also have to note down which are the states that is going to pass through, but it is just proposed, it is not a design. So that part of it, you may not have to worry for prelims. Next, so certain high-speed rail projects. Now we will touch upon high-speed rail projects. One of them, very important one, the much talked about is Mumbai Ahamedabad high-speed rail. That is India's first bullet train. Right? So this is developed by Japanese technology, Japanese Shinkansen technology. So what is the speed? Maximum speed is nearly 350 km per hour. That's the maximum speed. So, and the project is funded by 81% of the funding is coming from Japan International Cooperation Agency. How much? Nearly 1 lakh crore rupees. Right. So, how many stations are all? No need to worry. The travel time is going to decrease to 2 hours between Ahmedabad and Mumbai. And that's a old project actually that has been, commenced from 2021 onwards. So, it might get over by 2028, 2029. It is more like technological demonstration rather than utility, civil utility. It is more of a technological demonstration project. And the recent budget has announced 7 new HSR corridors. Again, this can be a prelims question. 7 new high-speed rail corridors. Which are they? That is Delhi to Varanasi, Varanasi to Siliguri. They are improving the connectivity for northeastern states, as well as Mumbai to Pune, Pune to Hyderabad. And we have a HSR triangle here, high-speed rail triangle between Hyderabad to Bangalore, Bangalore to Chennai, Chennai to again Hyderabad. Right? Southern HSR triangle. So this is the 7 new HSR corridors proposed in the current budget 26-27. So if we talk about the speed, almost the maximum speed is nearly 320 or 350 km per hour. So you can see this, the bullet train speed as well as the newly proposed HSR corridors train speed is almost similar. Got it? Then we'll talk about something called GIRG, that is Global Indices for Reforms and Growth. So this is kind of you can think like a platform, right, or an arrangement set up by Government of India to analyze and assess nearly 26 global indices. You might have heard about a lot of global indices like Human Development Index, Corruption Index, right? Likewise, Democracy Index. So there are so many prominent global indices. So this new GIRG platform is going to track, that is Global Indices for Reforms and Growth. Platform tracks 26 global indices from 16 international agencies. So who is going to do it? DMEO of Niti Aayog, that is Development Monitoring and Evaluation Office. Development Monitoring and Evaluation Office under Niti Aayog is going to assess and track these global indices along with the cooperation of 17 nodal ministries. 17 nodal ministries which are connected to those indices. So why are we doing this? It is used as a tool for evidence-based governance reforms. So whatever the indices talks about India's growth, it can be social aspect, economical, political, etc. So we will have to learn from them. We will have to address if there is any loopholes, right? For evidence-based global reforms. We are not making GIRG platform to criticize those indices. Rather, we are going to learn from them, right? We are going to understand how those indices have been devised, and that will act as a tool for our evidence-based governing mechanism. GIRG platform managed by DMEO, Development Monitoring and Evaluation Office of Niti Aayog, along with the coordination of 17 nodal ministries. So why are we doing this? It should act as a tool for evidence-based governing mechanism. We are not here to criticize them, rather we want to learn from those indices and try to devise policies so that we will become better in those indices. GIRG. So let's move on to another important topic with regard to industry, labor and trade. So under that we have very important topic, that is labor codes. See, labor codes were in the discussion like past 5-6 years ago, right? If you see, there are 4 labor codes: code on wages, code on industrial relations, code on social security, code on occupational safety, health and working conditions of the employees, right? So all these 4 labor codes, right? So they have been enacted to replace colonial laws which were like very difficult to comply with, and they were the reasons for Inspector Raj, right? So these codes have been enacted in 2019, 2020, etc. But why are they in the news? Though they were enacted 6 years ago, they have been notified recently, right? That means they are going to be implemented, or they are going to come into effect in the current financial year. That is why these 4 labor codes are in the news. So first of all, when you talk about labor, it falls under concurrent list. That means both parliament and state legislature are competent enough to make the laws. So how these codes are going to help? See, these codes are going to act as model laws. Model laws. Okay. So on top of this, state governments can come up with their state specific rules, state specific regulations. But they have to make sure that they are not going to violate the rules or the law, the specification that has been set under current codes. So there are 4 labor codes: code on wages, code on industrial relationships, code on social security, code on occupational safety, health and working conditions of the employees, right? So let us talk about important aspects of this code on wages. You can easily expect a question on this. So when you talk about code on wages 2019, see, this is the first time the labor code talking about organized and unorganized wages together. So it is going to consider both organized and unorganized employees. According to this code on wages, it brings in universal minimum wage for all workers. Universal minimum wage for all workers, which is also called national floor wage. All includes organized as well as unorganized. So what is this national floor wage? See, the central government is going to come up with a national floor wage, below which no state government should fix the wages. If state governments have to enact their own state specific laws regarding minimum wages, they have to set the minimum wages equal or above this national floor wage. First thing. Second thing is, how are they going to be determined? By considering geography of the state and skill set of the job. Based on this, central government is going to set a national floor wage. For example, the national floor wage for northeastern states can be different from whatever the southern states or northern Indian states because of different geography. right? So no state government should fix minimum wage below this national floor wage, right? So this is for both organized as well as unorganized workers. Now, so this code wages apply to all industries irrespective of the sector and all kinds of employees, skilled, semi-skilled, less skilled, etc. Contract employees, casual employees, piece rate workers. What is the difference between all this? See, contract means there will be some time period. Okay, there will be a contractor through which employees are going to be hired for a specific time period. And casual workers, there won't be any contractor, but again, these casual workers will not have any specific time period. Okay, casually, like as and when the work comes, they will be hired. As well as piece rate workers. Piece rate workers means they will be paid based on output they are going to generate. So how many cloths you are going to stitch per day, so that is the amount of money that you are going to be paid. So piece rate workers, again not important topic for prelims again. So just because I put these terms to not to get you confused, I am just explaining these things. But one more thing to be kept in mind is this does not address the minimum wages of gig employees. Gig employees are more like a freelance employees. Okay, so their outcome, their earnings based on whatever the amount of work they are going to deliver. Their earnings will be based on the amount of work they are going to deliver. That is why code on wages does not address the minimum wages for gig employees, right? One more important aspect is it brings in gender neutral equal pay. If men and women are employed in the same work, there should not be any discrimination between their wages, right? So gender neutral equal pay. If it is same work, then same wages to be paid, right? If you have seen in the labor construction side where the women labor are paid lesser than the male laborers, okay, that should not be done. And it also talks about overtime wages. If some employee works beyond the official hours, whatever the overtime, the amount of hour that is going to work, he should be paid double the regular wages. He should be paid or he or she should be paid double the regular wages, right? And then, so compliance and inspection, it talks about single simplified wage calculation formula. So how are you going to calculate the wages? For example, let's say if any of your friends got placed in some company, he would say CTC is so much and so. But whatever the take home money will be less than half of the CCT, right? CTC, right? So this code on wages says your wages, the meaning of wages is basic pay plus dearness allowance. So what is dearness allowance? The salary that is adjusted to cope up with the inflation, rising prices, right? So to cope up with the rising prices, your salary or basic pay is going to be adjusted. But rest, that is your HRA, house rent allowance, as well as bonus, as well as overtime payment, that should not be considered as part of your wages. So if you want to calculate the basic wage, you should consider only basic pay and dearness allowance. That is clear. Otherwise, what happens? Companies can claim that bonus and HRA also as part of their wages, and they can, that is uncertain, right? So that is why it is simplifying the definition of wages. Second thing is uniform pay period. So the wages must be paid before 7th day of the succeeding month. So the salary of March should be paid by 7th of April. Got it? And then if an employee is resigned or retrenched or laid off, whatever the compensation or salary must be paid to him should be paid within 2 working days after he resigns. Within 2 working days after he resigns. Got it? So that's about uniform pay period. And one more important aspect, the word inspector has replaced with facilitator, labor inspectors. So they would just pick and choose whichever the industry they would wish to visit today. They'll just go and they'll just inspect if the laws are complied with or not. If the laws are not complied with, they would just impose fines. So that is what we termed as Inspector Raj. It also amounted to a lot of corruption. So now inspectors are renamed to be facilitator. So their job is not only checking the compliance and imposing the fines, also to help the industries. If the industry is not able to comply with the rules or laws, they have to facilitate the industries so that they can be maintaining better compliance. So this is one way of government becoming facilitator. More than a regulator, it is becoming facilitator, right? That is one aspect of code on wages. Next, industrial relations code. It talks about employee-employer relationship. So it talks about legalization of fixed term employment. So fixed term employment means employee is going to be hired for a fixed term. It also called contract employment. It gives legal backing for FTE, fixed term employees. Earlier, whatever the permanent employees, they used to get the benefits that was not given to the FTEs. That is why there was a lot of pressure on the industrial establishments to convert these FTEs into full-time workers. Because FTEs or contract workers, they were not recognized in the law. They were not given equal provisions as per the full-time employees. Now, FTE has been legalized. That means FTE workers are going to get same benefit as permanent workers. FTE workers are going to get same benefit as permanent workers. So that means what? Now there is not going to be any mandatory for making these FTE workers as full-time workers. Earlier, FTE workers were pressurizing the establishments because they were not considered in any law. There was no social security given to them, and whatever the provisions given to permanent workers was not extended to the FTE workers. Now that problem is not there. Understood? And then it also talks about trade union recognition, right? So industries used to face a lot of problems with respect to multiple trade unions where they have to negotiate with each and every trade union. That is to bring a lot of lagging impact on the industrial production. Now the industrial code mandates single negotiating union. There should be one union which should be able to negotiate with the employer, and that must consist of 51% of membership required. That must consist of 51% of total employees. So 51% of total employees must be the member of that union, and that should be the negotiating union. Understood? So that reduces multiplicity of unions and provides clear bargaining. So let's say if there is no single union with 51% of membership, in that case a council will be formed. Council will be formed containing all the trade unions at least having 20% membership. There can be 3 trade unions or 4 trade unions having 20% membership. If there is no single union having 51% membership, the council will be formed having trade unions with at least 20% membership. Then the decision or disputes are going to be resolved, or decision will be taken, or negotiation happens. It is for negotiation, right? It also talks about layoff and retrenchment. Industrial Relations Code talks about layoff and retrenchment. So you are familiar with the word layoff, but what you understand about layoff? Layoff means just taking out of the employment, but legally that is not the definition. Layoff means temporarily keeping away from the work. Right? If there is no work, lack of funds can be the reason, natural calamity can be the reason, like you have a situation like COVID. So in those times, company might not get sufficient work. So it can put few employees off the work. They won't get any work, right? But still they will be in the employee role. They are still in the role of employees, but they are not getting any active work. That is called layoff period, technically. Right? So what is retrenchment? Retrenchment means taking off the job. You are nowhere, or henceforth you won't be part of the company at all. You are not even employee of the company. Understood? Difference between layoff and retrenchment. So it talks about prior government permission. Earlier, if any company had to retrench or lay off employees, if it is going to lay off 100 employees or it is going to retrench 100 employees, earlier it had to take the government permission. Now this threshold has been increased to 300. So what does it mean? If a company wants to lay off 299 employees or 299 retrenchments, it doesn't have to take permission of government. You can say that, sir, it is against the labor security. But in other words also, you can see industries were reluctant to hire the more number of employees because they were scared that it will be difficult for them to fire if there is no work. Understood? Earlier, the threshold was 100 employees. Industries used to be hesitant to hire more number of employees because they were thinking that it will be difficult for them to fire during the time of no work. Now, since the threshold has been increased, now it will be easier for the companies to hire more employees if there is more work, and they can also fire them, or they can also put them under layoff or retrench them if there is no work. So it is in favor of labor itself, right? Then it talks about dispute resolution, right? So for dispute resolution, the industry has to set up a bipartite council. Bipartite means council having equal representation of employers and employees. Council having equal representation of employers and employees, right? So that is for in-house dispute resolution. So if this in-house dispute resolution mechanism becomes unsuccessful, so what is the way out? So this code also provides for setting up of industrial tribunal and national industrial tribunal. If the dispute resolution fails within the in-house mechanism, the parties, either of the parties, can appeal to industrial tribunal or national industrial tribunal. So the industrial tribunal set up by state government, and national industrial tribunal will be set up by central government. Got it? So this is about dispute resolution mechanism. Also talks about uniform cooling period for strikes across all industries. So earlier, if employees had to go for a strike, they had to give 14 days notice for critical utilities. For example, electricity, water, such kind of industries where the utilities provided by the industry was crucial. There they had to give 14 days notice. But now, irrespective of any industry, it can be crucial or critical, whatever, non-critical, etc. Employees have to give 14 days notice before they go for strike. That has been made mandatory. Understood? Right. So this is about, and lastly, we can talk about reskilling fund. See, this reskilling fund also is part of Code on Social Security, but since I have given it here, I can mention that because there is also slight overlapping, right? So if any employee got retrenched or taken off the employment, right, he should be given with 15 days of wages. Whatever the regular wages he used to get, he should be given with 15 days of wages for the purpose of reskilling. So to fund these wages, the industry must maintain reskilling fund, right? Actually, it is not maintained by the industry. It is going to be maintained by the government. The employer must contribute 15 days equivalent wages to the fund. As soon as the employer contributes the fund, the money will be credited to the employee who got retrenched. Reskilling fund for retrenched employees to support their reskilling once they are out of the job, so that they can search better jobs and encash better economic opportunities. So the next labor code is Code on Social Security. So when you talk about social security, we think of pension, insurance, retirement benefits, etc. So what are the special aspects of this code is, for the first time, gig and platform workers are recognized under law for the first time. So platform workers, see, all these software platforms like Amazon, right, Blinkit, Zomato, Uber, Ola, they are all platforms, right? So these platforms employ gig workers, right? They also provide services or required services to the customers. So these platforms, they are also called aggregators. These platforms are also called aggregators. So this social security code mandates these aggregators must contribute 1 to 2% of their annual turnover into social security fund. Social security fund. Government is going to create a social security fund, and for that these aggregators have to contribute. So from the social security fund, whatever the necessary help will be done to the gig workers. For example, health insurance, or one time relief, help with respect to accident or during the time of death, etc. Right? So they have to contribute. Aggregators have to contribute 1 to 2% of their annual turnover to the social security fund. And next, gratuity for fixed term employees. See, earlier what used to happen, this gratuity, what is gratuity? It is kind of lump sum amount given to those employees who have worked for longer period of time, like more than 5 years. See, if they have contributed to any company for more than 5 years, so the gratuity would be provided to them, so that they can encash during the time of retirement, or during the time of even death, etc. But this gratuity was not available for fixed term employees who is to be employed for 1 year or 2 years, etc. So this new social security code mandates that the gratuity for fixed term employees should be made available even after 1 year, because they may not be expected to work for 5 years or more in any company, right? Because they are fixed term employees. So now the gratuity should be made available for fixed term employees even if they have worked for 1 year in a company, right? And then Employee State Insurance Corporation, ESIC, right? ESIC talks about insurance, specifically health insurance. So earlier, health insurance, the ESIC provision was allowed. Now it used to cover only certain number of industries, right? Certain kind of industries. Now thus that limitation has been removed. It is going to cover all establishments regardless of location. So if any company employs at least 10 employees, if any company employs at least 10 employees, they have to provide ESI option to the employees. So as per insurance plan or ESI plan, company will contribute around 3.25% of their salary, basic pay, whatever the employee is earning, and the employee will contribute 0.75%. So this will be accumulated as a premium in the employee insurance plan. So ESIC talks about Employee State Insurance Corporation. That's a state insurance corporation. This facility or coverage under this was available earlier only for certain kind of industries. Now the distinction has been removed, right? So any industry which employs at least 10 employees will get this coverage, right? That means what? It mandates those employers to contribute certain amount of certain percentage of their basic pay of the employee towards the insurance premium. So this will cover the insurance benefits to the employees, right? And then regarding building and construction employees, the cess fund for construction workers retained. So there is a cess fund. So all these builders, they would be charged certain percentage of cess. So this cess fund will go to building or other construction workers welfare fund, BOCW, building and other construction workers welfare fund, right? So this fund was specially meant for construction workers. Got it? So it was already there and it is been retained. But what is new? See, this welfare board, right? So the custodian of the fund will be building and other construction workers welfare board, which used to be set up in every state. Every state will have BOCW welfare board. So that used to handle the fund. So what used to happen in case of migrant workers, it was difficult for them to encash the benefits provided under welfare fund. Why? Because the fund used to mandate that whatever the labor has to be mandatorily registered in that state. If he or she has to get the benefits out of this welfare fund, he or she should have been registered in that particular state. But that cannot be feasible for the migrant workers. So they used to be at disadvantage. Now the new code says that migrant workers brought under welfare board coverage means what? See, there is going to be single registration. He or she doesn't have to register in every state where they are working. There will be single registration under e-Shram portal. Under e-Shram portal, there is going to be a single registration, right? So if the employee or labor is registered on the e-Shram portal, there is going to be a single registration. If he is working in, let's say he is coming from BR or working in Karnataka, so he would get benefit from welfare board under this BOCW welfare fund. Understood? So the welfare fund is been retained, but one additional change is introduced. The migrant workers concern also taken care of, saying that if a person is registered in some other welfare board, he is working in some other state, still he would be considered as beneficiary for the facilities given under the welfare board, because there is going to be a single point of registration under e-Shram portal. Understood? So, and there are certain other things also. Let's say, I told you, right, ESI option. ESI is been made mandatory for any company which employs at least 10 employees. But for hazardous industries which involve in manufacturing of chemicals or oil and gas exploration, etc., even if there is only one employee, they have to provide ESI option. That is one additional thing. Got it? I don't think prelims will dig so much depth, but you never know. We have now prelims has tendency of asking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 options, and then they are asking you to choose among them which is right and which is not right. So that is about ESI. And there is about EPF also, Employee Provident Fund option. Now it has been mandatory for any company which employs at least 20 employees. Got it? So what is the benefit? Right? Employer will contribute 12% of the basic pay of the employee to this fund, right? So provident fund will be helpful for the employee for its later stage, like retirement stage, they will get some good amount of money. And one more thing, there is a 50% rule. 50% rule means what? See, his basic pay must include 50% of the total amount, 50% of the total, whatever the salary that he is going to get. Means a salary will also include some allowances, HRA, bonus, etc., right? Companies will also give travel allowance, food allowance, etc. But this should not become more than 50%. Understood? Basic pay must constitute at least 50% of the total salary. So why this rule? See, all this PF contribution to the by employers and insurance plan contribution by the employers will be from the percentage of basic pay. When I say 12% of salary will be contributed by the employer for employee provident fund, it will be percentage of basic pay. So what companies used to do? They used to reduce basic pay percentage so that they can evade the responsibility of sharing the provident fund, right? Now, since this rule has come, basic pay must be maintained at least 50% of the total salary, so that it will help for better contribution towards EPF as well as ESI. Understood? So 50% rule. Got it? So this is some additional things. So one more important thing, not a new addition, but it has been retained. That is regarding maternity and creche benefits. Right? If any company has more than 50 employees, they have to provide creche benefits. Creche means the play area or area where the kids or infants are taken care of. So if any company has more than 50 employees, they have to be given with creche benefits. So as part of maternity, 26 weeks of maternity leave. Beyond that, companies are encouraged to provide work from home option as well. So that you already know. So this is not additional, but this has been retained, right, under Social Security Code. The last code among the labor codes, that is OHHWC that is Occupational Safety, Health and Working Conditions Code. So under this code, there are few important aspects. The code provides standardized working hours, that is 8 hours per day. Right? Standardized working hours, that is 8 hours per day, amounts to 48 hours per week. Right? Second thing is with respect to women workers. Now the code permits women to work in the night shifts irrespective of the industry. Now women are permitted to work in the night shifts irrespective of industry, but with safety conditions. The industry or factory establishment must provide necessary safety and with the consent of the women employee. Right? So safety must be ensured, consent must be taken. Women will be allowed to work in the night shifts irrespective of the industry. Next, with respect to migrant workers, travel allowance must be given to the interstate migrant workers. So the code also talks about ease of compliance, right? So it talks about single license, single registration, single return. So if the factory has multiple works that is being doing within the factory premises, there need not be obtaining different licenses for the different work. See, all those works functionalities within the factory can be summed up under single license. Second thing is single registration. Earlier there were multiple labor laws, the company has to register itself under multiple laws. Now it provides for single registration and single return, annual returns, right? So whatever the annual return format, it was different for different laws. Now there will be a single annual return. What does it? How does it help? It will reduce inspections because everything is made under digital. All this registration, getting license as well as filing return, everything has been made digital. It will reduce the compliance cost. It will also reduce the interference of the inspectors or reducing the inspections. Right? That means what? It is the first code to systematically address the migrant workers' welfare. I told, right, migrant workers will be given with interstate whatever allowances for travel. Next, so under this discussion, we were talking about layoff, retrenchment, code, labor code, etc. Under this discussion, there was one important judgment from Karnataka High Court. It was given in 2021. It was come under discussion. So what High Court judgment says, software engineers can be workmen. So under the definition of workmen under Industrial Disputes Act, now it has been replaced with Industrial Relationship Code of Industrial Relationship, but earlier it was Industrial Dispute Act. So there High Court of Karnataka said software engineers also can be workmen. Means what? Whatever the security is given to industrial workers with respect to layoff or retrenchment will be extended to the software workers also. Because software industry was more prone to external events and people, they'll think the job is very uncertain. Companies can just take off the employees from the job as and when they need. But the judgment says they are also subjected to the security given under labor laws. Earlier it was Industrial Dispute Act. Now it is under Industrial Relations Code. What was the security? We discussed already, right? A company, if it has to lay off or retrench, it has to, more than 300 employees, it has to take the permission of the government. And also, there are other things. See, layoff, I told you, it is temporary, retrenchment is permanent. Reason can be external constraints or business decision of employer, that's fine. That's not our point of discussion here. When you talk about compensation, right, when the person is laid off, that means he is still under employee role but not given any work. He is still subjected to 50% of wages, right? Company must pay 50% of wages. And in the case of retrenchment, company must pay 15 days wage per year of service. If the person has worked for 10 years, into 15 if you do, it will be 150 days of wage must be given to the retrenched employee. Also for retrenched employee, we saw that, right? There will be reskilling fund. And in additional to this compensation, industry also must provide him or her 15 days wages equivalent of reskilling fund. So for him to, help him to get better job employment by reskilling himself. And one more thing, when the definition of workman comes, only those people who are contributing technically, they will be considered as workmen. But roles like manager, tech lead, they are not part of, or they are not considered as workmen because they are not technically contributing. So maybe it's an old judgment, but still it is under discussion. Maybe asked in your and also there are a lot of news regarding layoffs on the backdrop of AI. So this judgment can be a question in the prelims. Right. So far we touched upon important current affairs topics with regard to industry and labor. Now we'll move on to discuss about few important current affairs topics regarding trade. Right. So among them, most important one is India-European Union Free Trade Agreement. Right, which was started, negotiations were started in 2007, paused in 2013, again they resumed in 2022, now they have been signed. 2026, they have been signed now. Right, so it is also called mother of all trade agreements, right, by Ursula von der Leyen, who is, president of European Commission. Why? Because it is going to affect nearly 2 billion people. Right, so free trade agreement means what? Generally, free trade agreement means we are going to drastically reduce the import duties, or we also make certain imports duty free. Right. So this agreement involves three separate agreements. That is, one is free trade agreement, second is investment protection agreement, third is GI agreement, that is geographical indication agreement. So let's touch upon important aspects of these agreements. See, in preliminary examination, they may ask which are the sectors India is going to gain and how, and which are the sectors European Council or European Union is going to gain. In other words, which are the imports from European Union is going to be cheaper. So maybe those things are important for prelims perspective. So when I talk about India, so let's see if free trade agreement means we are not going to reduce the import duties to zero overnight. We are not going to reduce import duties of all goods and services to zero overnight. That's not going to happen, right? We will for the maximum goods and services, import duties are going to be slashed significantly, or for some we may allow for zero import duty, right? So which are the sectors are going to be gaining with respect to this treaty? Textiles, leather, gems and jewelry. Remember these three: textiles, leather, gems and jewelry. Textile exports from India, leather exports from India, gems and jewelry exports from India are going to be duty free. Earlier they used to be taxed at 12 to 17% of import duty. Now they are going to be made duty free in European Union. Apart from that, service sectors, especially IT and service sectors, are going to be gained mainly because of mutual recognition of qualifications. First is enhanced market access. Our IT services are given, enhanced market access to European market, as well as mutual recognition of qualifications. So what is the meaning of mutual recognition of qualifications? If I am recognized engineer or Ayush practitioner or an accountant in India, this qualification will be mutually recognized in European Union as well. Similarly, whatever the qualification recognized in European Union will also be mutually recognized in India as well. So that will help this service provider to seamlessly access the job opportunities across the borders. Right. Also, as part of mobility and migration agreement, so what are the important aspects on this? As I told you, mutual recognition as well as social security portability. It talks about social security portability. Means what? Let's say Indian employees are paying for insurance in India, contributing for pension fund in India, and they will be moving to EU, any EU country for a shorter period of time. Let's say 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. But their labor laws also mandate them to contribute to the social security of European Union. right? So that leads to double contribution or dual contribution. It will impact the earning levels of employees. So under the new agreement, under the FTA agreement, the employees who are traveling to EU, though they are contributing in India with respect to the social security, they need not to contribute to the social security in European Union. Dual contribution will be reduced. So burden of economic impact or salary impact will be reduced on the employees, right? What is Europeans are going to gain? Two things. One is premium automobiles and wine, spirits, consuming spirit. I'm not talking about industrial spirit, it's about consuming spirit, right? So that are going to attract lesser duty. Similarly, automobiles, current import duty is 110%. That's going to be reduced to 10% in a phased manner, maybe in another 5 to 10 years. Got it? So premium automobiles and wine, spirit, you can talk about alcohol, consuming alcohol. They are going to be cheaper. The imported alcohol as well as luxury automobiles from EU are going to be cheaper. Along with that, high-end machinery, medical equipments as well as luxury goods, since they are also be having a lesser import duty, they are getting enhanced market access. So majorly you should remember textile, gems and jewelry as well as leather with respect to India, with respect to EU, alcohol, consuming alcohol which includes spirit and wine as well as luxury automobiles, right? So target of this trade is achieving 100 billion euro for another 15 years. In another 15 years, we are going to achieve 100 billion euro mutual trade, right? So that's about free trade agreement. Other aspect of India-EU FTA is investment protection agreement. It is nothing but protecting investors of European countries as well as Indian countries in their respective markets. If Indian investor is investing in European Union market or European Union investor is investing in Indian market, their investment must be protected. That's all. Ensures, so under non-discrimination, ensures European investors in India and Indian investors in the European Union are treated on par with domestic companies. So the way you treat your domestic companies, similarly you should be treating the EU investors also. Similarly for EU investors. Modern dispute settlement. Earlier there was ISDS, Investor State Dispute Settlement Model. Most of the FTA with India, India's FTA with other countries was not becoming successful because of the dispute settlement mechanism. Earlier, Investor State Dispute Settlement Model, which was a failed model. Now this FTA brings a new model which is called Investment Court System. Investment court system, which is transparent. I am not going to go in details about what is investment court system, right? Because it is not within the boundary of preliminary exam discussion. Maybe I can make a different video for that. But for preliminary examination, just make sure that you know EU FTA also includes a renewed investment court system mechanism for dispute resolutions. And then legal certainty and protection. It protects against exploitation without fair compensation, ensures free transfer of funds, and guarantees stable legal conditions over the investment life cycle. Legal conditions must be stable. For example, if an investor has come to India, invested today, there is certain law permitting him to invest in the Indian market. Suddenly, the law has been changed, right? Investor is going to be affected. So it talks about legal certainty and protection. So over and all, investment protection agreement talks about protecting investments of European investors as well as Indian investors in their different, foreign countries. If European investors come into India, investment must be protected. Similarly, Indian investor is moving to European Union, his investment also must be protected, right? And last, as part of European Union FTA agreement, we have GI agreement, Geographical Indications Agreement. For example, if something comes from European Union, let's say For example, champagne, European champagne, right? So Indians, we are not allowed to rebrand it and sell it for a different price. So their geographical indication must be protected in Indian market. For example, champagne, that is sparkling wine exclusively from Champagne region of France, followed by feta, kind of a cheese from Greece, and prosciutto di Parma, that is a ham. Ham means it is related to pork meat, right? From Italy, Scotch whiskey, especially from Scotland, Parmigiano Reggiano, that is cheese from Italy, Cognac, it's a brandy distilled in the France, Cognac region of France. So all these have to be protected with respect to their geographical indication. Similarly, India's products like Darjeeling tea, Kangra tea, Basmati rice, Alfonso mango, Kanchipuram silk, Mysore silk, all these have to be protected with respect to their geographical indication. So never know, you may also get a GI question regarding these items which are part of EU trade, right? So these are the three trade agreements as part of EU FTA trade agreement, right? What is investment protection, geographical indication protection, as well as FTA. Let's move on to another important free trade agreement, that is India-UK Comprehensive Economic Trade Agreement. See, FTAs, based on the nature, right, they have gotten different names, right? So how much comprehensive it is, based on the comprehensiveness of the treaty, right, based on the amount of freeness we are allowing into the market, right? So based on that, FTAs have got different names. India-UK Comprehensive Economic Trade Agreement, also a form of FTA, that has been signed again July 24, 2025, right? So very important thing to note here is, it is the first ever free trade agreement signed with any G7 country. First ever free trade agreement signed with any G7 country by India, and also India's 16th free trade agreement, right? As I told you, free trade agreement doesn't mean that we are going to allow all the products for duty free. Let us directly touch upon which are the important sectors or areas going to be benefited. It is almost similar to EU free trade agreement. Whichever the goods are going to be benefited from EU trade agreement, same goods are going to be benefited from UK CETA agreement as well. Textiles, leather and footwear, along with that tea and coffee, processed foods and gems, marine products, spices. See, for prelims perspective, you may have to remember these things. Common, textiles, leather and footwear, gems. Along with that, we have tea and coffee, marine products, spices and processed foods. So they are going to be duty free in the UK market. Similarly, which UK goods are going to be cheaper? Scotch whiskey, and then automobiles, right? We are not going to make them duty free, but we are going to reduce the duty significantly, existing 150% to 40% in next 10 years. That is in a phased manner. Similarly, luxury automobiles, we are going to reduce from nearly 70 to 110% existing import duty to 10% in next 10 years. So two important items, one is automobiles and Scotch whiskey. They are going to be cheaper with respect to UK India CETA agreement. And of course, India is going to protect dairy, cereals and millets, gold, jewelry, lab grown diamonds and edible oils. That means protect means what? We are not going to allow cheaper imports with respect to these goods, because to protect the domestic industry or domestic manufacturers, right? So because these were in the discussion, so India is going to compromise the future of Indian producers, especially farmers, especially cereals and dairy sector, right? So these were in the discussion. Maybe it's important for you to know. So protected sectors are these. Other important aspects with regard to India-UK CETA is 137 service sectors are open. You do not have to remember the number 137. But again, similar to India-EU Free Trade Agreement, there is a mutual recognition agreements have been signed. Mutual recognition. What are we going to recognize? Qualifications, especially with respect to nursing, architecture, accountancy. India and UK, they are going to mutually recognize qualifications of nursing, architecture and accountancy, that is coming from accountants or nurse or architects coming from UK are going to be recognized in India. Similarly, who are going out of India are going to be recognized in UK. And UK is going to provide 1,800 short-term work visas per year. Earlier, there was no definite number. Earlier, there were a lot of issues regarding UK banning, visa applications from India. Short-term means short-term work or short-term education, right? UK has agreed to provide 1,800, especially for chefs, yoga teachers, musicians, right? That is how India is going to benefit with respect to service sector. Very important, double contribution convention. Double contribution convention is part of India-UK CETA. What is that? As I explained in the earlier India-EU FTA, right? Same thing, but we have a different name for that. That's all, right? What does it mean? Indian employees working in India contributing towards social sector, for example, for their pension, insurance, etc. If they move out of India for a temporary period of time into UK, they are also mandated to contribute there for their social security in UK as well. That will lead to double burden, right? So, to protect from double contribution, right? Indian employees who are moving to UK for a shorter term, let's say for 3 years, they have been exempted from contributing for social security in UK. Got it? So, they do not have to contribute again if they are contributing in India for the sake of their social security. Double contribution convention. Remember, double contribution convention is part of India-UK CETA. And other important thing is India's first dedicated gender chapter in any FTA, right? To provide equal opportunity for women entrepreneurs to get benefit from India-UK CETA, there is separate gender chapter. With respect to women employment or with respect to women entrepreneurship, there is separate gender chapter. And for the first time, India opened, very important, for the first time India opened government procurement to foreign country outside UAE. Government procurement means what? If the government has to procure certain goods and services, earlier only UAE was the foreign country which was allowed to participate. Now, apart from UAE, now UK is also allowed to participate as a class 2 supplier. The classes, class 1, class 2. See, these classes are divided based on amount of domestic, component in the goods. For example, if the 50% of the component is from UK, that is class 1. If the 20% of the component is from UK, if there is any product, in that 20% component is from UK, that is class 2. So, apart from UAE, only UK is allowed as class 2 supplier for government procurements. Also, briefly, let us look at recent FTAs signed by India. So, as I told you, India-UK CETA, just now we discussed. India-UAE CEPA signed in 2022. India-Australia ECTA signed in 2022. India-EFTA, that means European Free Trade Association. European Free Trade Association includes Switzerland, Liechtenstein, Norway, Iceland. They are all part of your EFTA. So, India signed TEPA with EFTA in 2024. India-Oman CEPA in 2025. So, what are the CETA, CEPA, ECTA and all? So, I told you CETA is Comprehensive Economic Trade Agreement. CEPA, Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement. ECTA, Economic Cooperation and Trade Agreement. TEPA, Trade and Economic Partnership Agreement, right? And CEPA again, Economic and Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement. So, we want to know the differences between this. For prelims perspective, I am talking about. First thing we want to know is which agreement we have signed with which country. So, if the option is about India-UK signed a CEPA, that's not right. India-UK signed CETA. See, UAE and Oman. With UAE and Oman, India signed CEPA. With UK, India signed CETA. With Australia, India signed ECTA. And only with European Free Trade Association, India has signed TEPA. I will touch upon briefly what is the difference between these agreements. Before that, first thing to know is which country, which type of agreement. Second thing is which areas are going to be affected or impacted, benefited. With respect to UK, just now we discussed textile, leather, service sector is going to be impacted. With respect to CEPA, with UAE, gems and pharmaceuticals are going to be benefited. With respect to Australia, pharmaceutical and automobile industry. With respect to European Free Trade Area, overall manufacturing, and more important is investment. This Trade and Economic Partnership Agreement focuses more on investment. So EFTA has pledged 100 billion investment in India. Trade Economic Partnership Agreement with EFTA more focuses on investment part rather more than trade part. India-Oman labor intensive exports like leather and textiles. Now we'll talk about differences. So since we talked about many types of FTAs, right, like CEPA, CETA, ECTA, etc. Right. So what is the order? Right, they differ based on the comprehensiveness. Right, how much comprehensive it is. Some agreement might just involve freeing up the market with respect to only goods. Some also might include services. Some also include mobility of the people across the borders. Some also include investment, etc. Right. So based on the comprehensiveness, if we want to order them, right, that can be a question. So initially, what comes is ECTA, right, Economic Cooperation and Trade Agreement, which you have signed with Australia. That we can say as early harvest or limited harvest, where the market is not completely open, but they are just testing, right, how well the two countries can coordinate with each other with respect to opening up their goods and services trade. Next is your TEPA, Trade and Economic Partnership Agreement, which we have signed with European Free Trade Association. It is kind of a semi-comprehensive, right? So TEPA with EFTA focuses more on investment, though there is slight open up of market, right, reduction in import duties, etc. But main focus here is investment. Next comes your FTA. FTA generally in economic terms, we talk about freeing up each other's markets with respect to majority goods, right? We tend to not focus more on services, but generally if you call FTA, right, in economic terms we say the market is opening up majorly for goods more than services, right? So then followed by CETA, which we have signed with UK, Comprehensive Economic Trade Agreement, where it also includes trade and investment. Got it? Almost similar. We can't say that CEPA is more comprehensive, but almost similar to CETA, we have CEPA, where it is more comprehensive than any other FTA or the free trade agreements. It includes free or opening up economy, each other's economy for the sake of trade in goods, movement of people, which is part of services, and also focus on investment. Also cooperating each other with respect to economic regulations, economic standards, right? Sharing each other the best practices, right? So if there is a question regarding the comprehensiveness of the trade agreements, you can take this. Initially, we can talk about ECTA, that is with Australia that we have signed, TEPA that with EFTA we have signed, FTA, and then FTA that we have signed with European Union, and CETA which we have signed with UK, and CEPA with many countries, right? That can be the order of comprehensiveness. So in the trade aspect, there is one more thing in the current affairs, that is Export Promotion Mission. Export Promotion Mission that is introduced for 6 years that is current financial year to 2031. Export Promotion Mission having allocation of nearly 25,000 crore as part of Ministry of Commerce, right, implemented by DGFT, right, Director General of Foreign Trade. So what are the important aspects of this? It is going to subsume the current schemes, that is interest equalization scheme and market access initiative. So these are current schemes which are subsumed under export promotion mission. So currently under this new mission, this interest equalization scheme is now part of Niryat Protsahan. Niryat means export. Niryat Protsahan subsumes IES scheme, interest equalization scheme. Under this, interest subvention up to 2.75% will be given on pre and post shipment credit. Interest subvention means government is going to bear some part of interest, right? That's about Niryat Protsahan scheme. When I talk about Niryat Disha, right, market access initiative is subsumed under Niryat Disha. It is non-financial, but it provides infrastructure which is necessary for testing, certification of export items to meet global quality standards, right? So these two schemes are part of export promotion mission which has been launched in the current financial year for next 6 years. So this is very much factual, right? Next, predatory pricing. Predatory pricing is in news. So first of all, what is predatory pricing? It's a dominant firm is intentionally lowering the price of goods and services below its market value just to capture the market and throw out the weaker competitors, and later on once the competitors are thrown out, it is going to recover all its losses by increasing the price because it will become the leader of the market, right? So next is predatory pricing. So predatory pricing is in news. I'll tell you why. Before that, let us understand what is predatory pricing. It is like a dominant firm or a dominant enterprise, right, fixing the price of goods and services well below its market value only to throw out the nearest competitors which are kind of weaker to compete, right? So this dominant firm have deeper pockets and they can suffer losses for shorter term until these weaker competitors will be thrown out of the market. So once they are thrown out of the market, this dominant player will become the monopoly. They will gain the monopoly over the product and now they can increase the price and they can recover all the losses which they had suffered earlier. Right? It is an unfair trade practice. It is illegal again in the as per the Section 4 of Competition Act 2002. It is also called as abuse of dominance. Got it? Now again, who can be guilty? See, this you can call it as illegal trade practice only if it is practiced by a firm with a dominant position. Dominant position means which is like well established, have deeper pockets. But if the prices are reduced by smaller firms, we cannot say that as predatory pricing. We can call it as competition, not predation, right? Only if it is practiced by the market player which is very dominant. Fine. So of course it is nothing to do with consumer welfare, because earlier it may look like the company is offering goods and services for a very cheaper price, but once they acquire the monopoly, they will become the dominant market player and they will obviously increase the prices so that they can recover the losses, right? It has nothing to do with consumer welfare. So why is it in the news? As per new Competition Commission of India regulations, Competition Commission of India is a statutory body established under Competition Act 2002. As per these regulations, the calculation of market value has been changed. See, how can you determine this is a predatory pricing? By understanding what is the actual market value of the good or service, right? Got it? So earlier, the term market value was very vague. Got it? So it was difficult to determine what is the exact market value of a good or service. Now the new regulations has brought in new methodology of calculating the market value. So that is called average total cost as well as average avoidable cost. Average total cost and average avoidable cost. So ATC and AAC methodology has been replaced the vague market value methodology, which was earlier used to calculate the find out what is predatory pricing. So as per the new rules, so see, to simplify this, ATC average total cost is kind of permanent cost or static cost. That is, you are manufacturing something in industry, but you are paying rent, you are paying salary. See, this will not vary based on number of products you manufacture, right? This is anyways static, expenditure you are going to make. But average avoidable cost is your electricity that you are consuming, the raw materials that you are consuming, that is average avoidable cost. If a company can bear this static cost, it's okay, man, I will bear the rent, I will bear the salary also, I have some other source of income, but at least the product price must be equal to this average avoidable cost, right? What is the raw materials that has been utilized, how much energy that has been spent, etc. So now, if a good or service is been priced below this average avoidable cost, straight away it will be termed as predatory pricing. This is so much of technical thing. I don't think if Prelims is going to ask in so much depth. But for you to understand, if any good or service has been priced below average avoidable cost, then we can call it as predatory pricing. And the current rule does not consider recoupment. What is recoupment? So earlier the definition of predatory pricing is a dominant player intentionally reduces the price of goods and services below its market value, and once the competitors are thrown out of the market, it is going to recover all its losses. That is called recoupment. Recovering all the losses when it become dominant player in the market is called recoupment. So only when the recoupment is done by the industry, we used to call it as predatory pricing. Got it? So now, as per new regulations, there is no recoupment needed. We will just consider the price is predatory only if and if it is lesser than average avoidable cost. We don't care if the company later on is going to recoup its losses or not. We don't consider as per new regulations. So recoupment is not needed to calculate or to consider which is the price is, if the price is predatory or not. Recoupment is not needed. So it's about new regulation regarding predatory pricing. Duopoly and market regulation. See, my dear friends, so they may give an instance and ask you about if the price is predatory or not. At least for that kind of questions you need such details. Got it? So now there is also a discussion about duopoly and market regulation. Again, it is pertaining to Competition Commission of India. What is duopoly? Two major participants in the market, they are ruling the entire market. For example, let's say your Airtel and Jio is ruling the telecom sector. Similarly, Android and iOS is ruling the smartphone sector, etc. Right? So this duopoly, that per se it is not an illegal practice. Yes, two people can dominate. But if they include or if they involve unfair trade practices, then duopoly can be called as illegal. So this discussion came into picture because in the context of Android phones as well as iOS phones. See, there was a case against Android, right, against Google. So whoever manufactures Android phones, Google mandates them to install its own applications, right? If any company manufactures smartphone, Android smartphone, Google mandates those smartphones to include its own applications if they want to get access to Play Store. That is kind of forcing them to use the Google applications, right? That is not a fair trade practice. That is kind of misusing its market dominance, right? So that is not a fair trade practice. Similarly, these apps like iOS as well as Android, whichever the paid applications you have to use in the Android phone or an iPhone, the billing of the paid apps has to go through Play Store or it has to go through App Store in the iOS phone. If you are going to install any or use any paid app in your Android phone, the billing has to be routed through, mandatorily has to be routed through Google Play Store. And Google Play Store also seeks some commission. Got it? That means what? It is misusing its market dominance. That's also unfair trade practice. Similarly, iOS. Again, if you have to install any paid app in your iOS phone or iPhone, the billing has to be routed through App Store. Got it? Again, that is also fair trade practice. It is kind of misusing their market dominance. So that is illegal as per Competition Commission of India regulations, right? So now, what is the context? Government has introduced Digital Competition Bill 2024. In the Digital Competition Bill 2024, it introduces ex ante rules for digital markets. Ex ante rules for digital markets. What is ex ante rule? There can be two types of rules. One is ex post and ex ante. Ex post means once the unfair trade practices has been committed, then the regulatory body does investigations, then it finds out that a particular firm is guilty. But after all this process has been done, the market would be already damaged. The weaker competitors would already been thrown out of the market. But new rules talks about ex ante. Ex ante means earlier. In the earlier stage itself, the rules will kick in and they will investigate. If the firm is found to be guilty, it will be imposed with penalties. So new Digital Competition Bill introduced ex ante rules, and it also bans, right, systematically significant digital enterprises. The example I gave you, iOS and Android, they are called systematically significant digital enterprises. The current bill bans self-preferencing on dominant platforms. See, this is my platform, I own it. What I will do, I will prefer my own apps. I will not allow any fair competition for other apps. So this particular bill bans it. But again, why it is in the news? It is not because it has been introduced in 2024. It has been withdrawn by the government. In 2025 August, Digital Competition Bill has been withdrawn by the government. Right? Because citing the reason that this bill might kill the innovation or creativity. Got it? So that is the reason. Right? It doesn't matter if you accept the reason or not, the bill has been already withdrawn by the government. So in that context, there can be a question regarding duopoly. Next, so there is a new methodology of National Industrial Classification has been introduced in 2025. Right. So industries have been classified by using earlier it used to be a 5-digit number, now that is upgraded to 6-digit number. This classification of industries is very crucial to calculate GDP, GVA, etc. Right? Which sector is contributing how much. So this code denotes this industry is from which sector. So now the 5 digits has been upgraded to 6 digit. So what is the advantage? What is the impact of that? First thing is 6-digit structure tracks highly specific micro sector. There can be a sector, under that there can be a micro sector, right? This 6-digit code will be highly specific. But there can be a question regarding who is going to publish it. It is going to be published by National Statistical Office under Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation. Got it? It is being published by NSO under MOSPI. One more important thing can be important for prelims. The code is tech agnostic. The code is tech agnostic. Tech agnostic means irrespective of technology. For example, let's say I am teaching using a camera. I am reaching you people through digital means. Also, I can teach within the classroom as well, right? But the difference is technology. New code does not differentiate based on technology. If you are teaching in a classroom for offline students, or if you are reaching out to the students through online means, teaching is a profession, right? It is treated uniformly. Similarly, a power loom or a hand loom, though in a power loom machineries are used, both power loom and hand loom will be classified as same sector. That is called tech agnostic. So new in National Initial Classification Code is been upgraded to 5 to 6 digit, and it is been made tech agnostic, and it is going to be published by NS4 under Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation. Next, Financial Conditions Index. So this is not something new. It was already there. It has been devised by RBI since 2012, but it has been in the news. But we don't commonly talk about this index. So what is it about the index? Financial Conditions Index tracks money market, government security market, corporate bond market, forex market as well as equity market. It is going to track all these 5 markets. For what? To understand what is the credit availability, to understand what is the interest rate, to understand what is the liquidity in the market, right? So this Financial Conditions Index, by tracking all these 5 markets, is going to give us fair idea about liquidity, credit availability and the interest rate in the market. Now, if the index is positive, this can be a prelims question. If Financial Conditions Index is positive, that denotes tighter conditions, means difficulty in taking the loan or lesser liquidity in the market or shortage of money in the market. Positive value in the FCI denotes tighter conditions. Negative value denotes looser conditions, means cheap loan, ample amount of cash available in the market. Got it? So this index has been used by RBI to understand what is the money availability, what is the credit availability. Accordingly, it can devise its own monetary policy, and also it can conduct its open market operations, etc. Right. So why is in the news? RBI's withdrawal of accommodation. Withdrawal of accommodation means what? Accommodative monetary policy means what? Reduction in interest rate. Withdrawal in accommodation means what? Reducing, increase in the interest rate or neutralizing the interest rate. So recently RBI withdrawn the accommodation, means it has stopped decreasing the interest rate. Either interest rate stayed neutral or it has started to increase a bit, right? So that situation led to positive FCA values. When there is a tighter monetary conditions, FCA value will turn positive. That's about Financial Conditions Index. Then SME Growth Fund and Patient Capital. SME, Small and Medium Enterprises Growth Fund. It is being introduced in the current financial year budget. SME Growth Fund, it is also called Patient Capital. See, what is the unique thing about this is, government, especially as the name itself says, it is to promote potential small and medium enterprises. Here, government does not become a passive spectator with respect to promoting the SME growth, rather it will become active shareholder in the business. Means what? Earlier, government is to provide loans to the SME enterprises, right? So SMEs were under the pressure to pay interest rate every month, and government doesn't used to be bothered about how the enterprise is growing or not. It just gives some easier credit and waits for the interest. That is kind of a passive spectator role. Now what government does is, government identifies potential small and medium enterprises and it is going to invest in equity. It is going to buy certain shares of the company. In that case, what happens? SME won't come under pressure of paying interest rate every month. Government becomes the shareholder. Either it can be in the profit or it can be in the loss. So it will provide necessary capital for the company to grow bigger. Got it? So what is the problem in our SME sector? Problem of missing middle syndrome. Missing middle syndrome. What happens in the initial stage of MSC or small and medium enterprises? There is going to be a lot of government incentives, cheaper loans, etc. Right? Less complaints cost, etc. So they'll somehow find some growth. Once they grow bigger, they don't want to grow bigger, because if they grow bigger, they are going to lose the government benefits. Right? and some sectors which have got huge potential, they can sustain, even though without having any government help, they can sustain. They will bypass this, initial phases. They will slowly grow and become bigger enterprises. So there exists a situation where there are smaller enterprises, there are bigger enterprises, but in between those enterprises who cannot live without government help, they don't even grow bigger. They will remain small. So at some point of time, we will see smallest or smaller enterprises and bigger enterprises. The middle level enterprise is going to be missing. That is called missing middle syndrome. Understood? So to help such situation, government is bringing in SME growth fund. Under this, what happens? Government is going to invest in the potential small and medium enterprises for 5 to 7 years. It is not like it invests today and next year itself it will take out the profit. No. Here the motive of the government is not to make profit. It is to boost the growth of SMEs. Right? And hence, this government backed fund takes ownership stake, and hence it also shares risk of failure. So now the small medium enterprises doesn't have to bother about failures, or doesn't have to worry much about failures. They can bring in more innovation, bring in more investment, they can propel. That's about SME growth fund. So how is it going to be invested? Government doesn't directly identify them. There is going to be a fund of funds located in SIDBI, right? Small Scale Industries Development Bank of India. Fund of funds located in SIDBI, and that fund of funds will fund alternative investment funds which are specialized in identifying potential MSCs or MSMEs. Got it? Because government does not have expertise to identify potential MSME, so it will identify AIF, alternative investment funds, who have gotten expertise in identifying potential MSMEs. So that AIF in turn will invest in MSME. They will become shareholder. Indirectly, it is government which is going to become shareholder of MSME. Right. So how government can exit? Government can exit through, if once the company grows bigger, right, its stocks have been listed in BSE or MSE, small medium enterprises platforms, BSE SME, and there is also NSE SME. This BSE and NSE are stock exchanges, right? So under the stock exchanges, there are separate SME platforms dedicated to invest in small and medium enterprises, right? So once the institute or enterprise grows bigger, their stocks are going to be listed in one of these platforms, and then government can exit profitably. So that's about SME growth fund. It is called patient capital because government invests and waits for enterprise to grow bigger. Government invests not with the motive of making immediate profit, not with the motive of earning immediate interest, right? Government is going to invest and wait for 5 to 7 years, right? So that the company can grow bigger, and later point of time, once it becomes mature, government can exit with decent profit. That's about SME growth fund. Let us touch upon some important current affairs topics with regard to agriculture and other basic concepts related to agriculture. Okay. So now, MS Swaminathan, proponent of Green Revolution in India, has been in the news because of its birth centenary. Right? So he was born in 1925. Right. Recently in the August month, we celebrate his birth centenary. So there is a tendency of UPSC Prelims examination asking questions regarding famous personalities. So MS Swaminathan can be the person for this year. Okay, so few things about him. He is been given with Bharat Ratna, highest civilian award, 2024 posthumously. Right. Also, he is the winner of World Food Prize, inaugural World Food Prize in 1987, given by World Food Prize Foundation, located in USA. Right. So UNEP also regarded him, right, as father of economic ecology. Right. United Nations Environmental Program regarded him regard MS Swaminathan as father of economic ecology. So first things first, you know, he is the proponent of Green Revolution that happened in 1960s and 70s, where we had huge food shortage and we wanted to bring in some scientific intervention in the agriculture, right? So he introduced semi-dwarf Mexican wheat, right? So which used to be grown in very short term, high productivity, right? And then Pusa Basmati 1, that is world's first semi-dwarf high yield variety basmati variety. High yield varieties. We needed high yield varieties because at that time productivity of agriculture was very less, huge population, there was less food to consume, right? So that was the reason Swaminathan introduced high yield varieties and helped in green revolution. And he is also proponent of evergreen revolution. We know him only for green revolution, but is also proponent of evergreen revolution. What is evergreen revolution? Pro nature, pro poor approach includes productivity without ecological harm, right? So green revolution, there are so many drawbacks, right? So only rich farmer could afford input cost, right? Only they used to get the benefit of advanced varieties of plants, right? As well as it is seen to be harming the environment because huge extraction of groundwater and excessive usage of pesticides or chemical fertilizers, right? So the proposed evergreen revolution talks about productivity without ecological harm and pro poor approach and pro nature approach of agricultural productivity, which includes integrated pest management, integrated nutrient management, water conservation, renewable energy on farms, climate resilient millets, etc. So I don't think Prelims is going to ask what are the components of evergreen revolution, but you must know MS Swaminathan, not only known for evergreen revolution, not only known for green revolution, but also for evergreen revolution, right? So there are certain policies which are influenced by MS Swaminathan suggestions. First thing is National Commission for Farmers, set up in 2004. National Commission for Farmers. He is the chairman of National Commission for Farmers. And this commission is known for MSP formula, minimum support price formula, right? That is C2 plus 50%. C2 weighted average cost. Weighted average cost included all the input cost, that is paid A2, plus family labor FL, plus along with that rent on own land, plus interest on owned capital, right? Currently MSP is decided based on A2 plus FL. The government has not incorporated rent on owned land aspect of it as well as interest on owned capital aspect of it. So MS Swaminathan formula talks about weighted average cost, which is C2. C2 is equal to A2 plus FL plus rent on owned land, interest on owned capital. So above that, at least 50% should be given as MSP. That is MS Swaminathan's famous MSP formula. Now, he is also proponent of empowering women with respect to agriculture. You know, right? Womenization of agriculture. Men are migrating to the cities in search of jobs. So women are now taking care of the lands. So by introducing Women Farmers Entitlements Bill, right? By proposing Women Farmers Entitlements Bill, so as a private member bill, he proposed providing land rights for the women so that women can avail loans. Got it? Women also must own the land so that they can avail loans and they can prosper, right? So what used to be happening? What was happening? Men used to migrate out of villages, right? So women were become landless laborers in the farm. They didn't have tenancy rights. They couldn't take loan. They don't even own the farm, right? In that way, they can't reinvest in the farm and they will be continuously in poverty. So Women Farmers Entitlement Bill was also outcome of MS Swaminathan suggestions. And then he is also one of the main reason for our PPV FR Act, Protection of Plant Varieties and Farmers Right Act 2001. What is PPV FR? We can discuss shortly. He is also main reason for Biological Diversity Act 2002. Right. So, not only food security, he also proposed nutrition security as well as bio happiness. So, we all know that though India is able to feed its own population, but it is lagging behind providing right nutrition. Right. So, he also proposed shifting focus from food security to nutrition security. So, why I am explaining these things is because we know MS Swaminathan only because of food security and green revolution. But he also proposed about eco-friendly practices. He also proposed nutrition security. So that is the reason I'm trying to explain these things. Second concept is biohappiness. Biohappiness is humans are exploiting the nature for its greed. So he said we can also live a good life, that is well-being, from biodiversity conservation. We can live a better life from biodiversity conservation, also through human livelihood harmony. We can also earn our livelihood as well as conserve biodiversity, and so that we can live a happy life. That is called concept of biohappiness. That's about MS Swaminathan. So since we mentioned PPV and FR Act in the context of MS Swaminathan, let us talk about few things about PPV and FR Act, that is Protection of Plant Varieties and Farmers' Right Act. So what are the important things? It has two components: protection of plant varieties. That means if there is a breeder, if he develops a new seed, new variety of seed, he will have the protection, right? He can sell it, he can commercialize it. But what about farmers' right? If the farmer is saving those seeds, sowing them, growing the seeds, exchanging those seeds and selling those seeds in an unbranded manner, he has that right too. Got it? Farmers can save, exchange and sell those unbranded seeds. That is about farmers' rights. Protection of plant variety, it secures the right of the breeder. And if a breeder commercializes a traditional variety of a farmer, the farmers get compensation. Understood? So that's about PPV and FR Act of 2001. So MS Swaminathan is the proponent of the PPV and FR Act. It complies with TRIPS agreement, WTO TRIPS agreement. India is the first country to recognize farmers as breeders, not just end users of seeds. It also complements Biological Diversity Act of 2002 because it also leads to securing the traditional varieties of seeds and plants. That is the reason it also complements Biological Diversity Act of 2002. Next, nano fertilizers were in the news. Why? I will tell you. Before that, what is a nano fertilizer? See, the nutrients, the plant nutrients are encapsulated in a nanomaterial. Nanomaterial which is less than 100 nanometers. So if the nutrients are encapsulated in nanomaterial, so what is the advantage? Advantage is precision, improved precision of applying of fertilizers. So you can apply in a limited quantity. Why? Because this nanomaterial coated nutrient, they get absorbed in the soil slowly. They get absorbed into the soil slowly, and hence they can be reached, or they will reach the target effectively. In the general fertilizer, what happens? Indiscriminate use of fertilizer happens because they will immediately get absorbed into the soil, but plants won't absorb them so quickly. That leads to leaching of the fertilizers. Sometimes they will also reach nearby water pond or water body. They will also be leached into the groundwater. Got it? So these are the disadvantages of traditional fertilizers. But this nano fertilizers reduces all this impact of fertilizers. Okay, it leads to better absorption, lesser applicability of the fertilizers, and hence reduces the instances of water pollution and soil pollution. Right. So nutrients, what is nano fertilizers? Nutrients encapsulated in nanomaterials. Very important, it acts as a supplement. It is not a replacement of conventional fertilizers. It is not a replacement of conventional fertilizers. Rather, it is just a supplement. See, conventional fertilizers, they will be absorbed by the roots. They will be applied on the roots. But nano fertilizers, they will be applied on the leaves. Got it? So that is why they are not replacement for conventional fertilizers, but they are supplement. In other words, it will reduce the quantity of conventional fertilizers we are supposed to use. If 100 kg has been used earlier, it will come down to 60 kg. Nearly 40% of the uses of fertilizers will come down because of this nano fertilizer. Got it? So what are the key benefits? It reduces soil degradation, groundwater contamination, leaching losses, right? So it supports precision agriculture, drone based spraying. You might have seen all the drones are, they were moving around the farm and spraying the things. So nano fertilizers is useful for that. Are you suitable for that? So some facts regarding this. IFCO, Indian Farmers Fertilizers Cooperative. Indian Farmers Fertilizers Cooperative is responsible for developing nano urea, world's first liquid nano urea. Got it? So it is 500 ml of the nano urea is almost equivalent to 1 bag of traditional urea. Also, the IFCO has developed nano diammonium phosphate fertilizer. Nano DAP, diammonium phosphate fertilizer. Also, IFCO has established first overseas plant in Brazil. First overseas plant in Brazil to manufacture nano diammonium phosphate nano fertilizer. Right. And recently, why nano fertilizer is in the news? Because TERI, the Energy Resource Institute of India, the Energy Resource Institute of India has developed nano sulfur. Nano sulfur is a secondary nutrient often neglected by the farmers. Institute Theory has developed nano sulfur in 2025. This nano sulfur is bio-based. It acts as a growth promoter. It also acts as antibacterial. So whatever the nano sulfur developed by Theory is a bio-based sulfur to promote growth as well as it acts as an antibacterial too. In the Union Budget 25-26, the government has introduced Pradhan Mantri Dhan Dhanya Krishi Yojana. Pradhan Mantri Dhan Dhanya Krishi Yojana, it is not something new. It is kind of supporting, it's a program to support 100 low performing districts. Under this scheme, 100 low performing districts will be identified. What is the meaning of low performing districts? Districts which have low yield, water scarcity, and high rural distress. Distress meaning low income, poverty, etc. So these 100 districts will be identified. In that district, total of 1.44 lakh crore money is going to be spent. Why? By converging 36 existing schemes, they are going to speed up and converge the implementation of 36 existing schemes. So, Pradhan Mantri Dhan Dhanya Krishi Yojana is not a new scheme, but it identifies 100 low performing districts and it brings in faster implementation of and effective implementation of 36 existing agricultural related schemes. Example, PM Kisan, Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana, Pradhan Mantri Krishi Sinchai Yojana, etc. Right, with the coordination of 11 ministries. Pradhan Mantri Dhan Dhanya Krishi Yojana, 100 low performing districts to promote or to converge and speed up the implementation of 36 schemes which are related to agricultural development. Right. So what are the targets? Targets may not be so important, but still, as part of the scheme, if we talk about to increase the yield by 20 to 30%, reduce the post-harvest losses less than 5%, and using Internet of Things, sensors, AI dashboards, drones, etc. So introduction of technology also has been done to improve the yield in this low performing districts. Next is Bharati Initiative. Bharati Initiative. This is specifically meant for promotion of exports, agri exports. Promotion of agri exports. by supporting agri startups. Promotion of exports by supporting agri startups. Bharati Initiative, remember this? Okay. So, what does it do? It provides incubation support. Incubation support means whatever the technology they would need, infrastructure they would need. Who? Agri startups. It provides incubation support to the agri startups, right? For promoting exports. In general, it also promotes AI, blockchain technology, Internet of Things in the agricultural sector. Mainly focus on GI tagged products, organic foods, superfood means nutrition rich food, nutraceuticals, right? Nutrition based medicines. So the scheme targets 50 billion agri exports by 2030. So if you remember Bharati Initiative, remember agri exports and agri startups, right? Again, it focuses on GI tag products, superfoods, organic foods, as well as nutraceuticals. So this maybe whatever the focus area may not be important for prelims, but at least we should know it is focusing on promoting exports by helping agri startups. Target also can be important to achieve $50 billion worth of export in agricultural sector by 2030. Now, Engels Pause. Engels Pause. It is a concept where though growth improves, productivity rises, real wages become stagnant. It happened in the industrial revolution era where people were working. Once the machines were introduced, productivity increased, growth increased, but people, the wages, real wages of the people did not rise. Why? Because people lost bargaining ability because machines are ready to replace them. Got it? So contribution of people against machineries has become very low. So the investors earned more, but the workers suffered. That is called Engels Pause. Scenario where growth and productivity increasing, but the workers suffer with stagnant wages or stagnant income levels. So what is the outcome? Urban poverty, poor working conditions, labor unrest in early factories. I am talking about during industrial revolution. But why is it in the news? The same situation might arise in the modern AI era. Modern AI era, AI is becoming more, it is just spreading across all the sectors, especially skill based employment sectors, especially technology based employment sectors. AI is helping industries to, improve their productivity and develop the things within no time. Got it? So nowadays, companies are investing in technology, more in technology than the people. So if 10 people used to do work in 1 week, a machine or an AI agent does the same work in 1 day with more precision and effectiveness. So now what's happening? Companies are making money by employing more and more AI tools. Growth is happening, GDP is growing, productivity is improving, but the workers suffering with stagnant incomes or they even lose jobs. Again, that's called Engels Pause. Engels Pause or Engels Pause, however you want to pronounce, you can pronounce. So what happens? Broader implications, rising inequality, jobless growth, social unrest, regional disparities. Right? Developed and developing country gap widens. Similarly, rural and urban gaps widens. Right? The relative poverty gap that we're experiencing in India, it is going to widen. Engels Pause. Productivity is increasing, growth is improving, but income levels are remaining stagnant. That can, the same situation which we experienced during the industrial revolution era, we are going to see the same thing with the modern AI era. Sustainable Development Report, again very common news item. Every year we are going to come across. You never know, it might be as a very important report. And for that matter, you have to focus on important reports and indices. Which body that is going to publish it? What is the theme of it? If there is any target given or if there is any inference driven in the report, you must know that too, right? So it is not just sufficient to understand which body is giving it. Go a little bit deeper, understand the theme of it. What is the highlight of the report? If there is any ranking or something, understand what is the rank of India also. So Sustainable Development Report of 2025, first thing first, it will be published by UN Sustainable Development Solutions Network. UN SDSN, Sustainable Development Solutions Network. Sustainable Development Report. You all know that, right? We have Sustainable Development Goals devised by UN to be achieved by 2030. So this report tracks how much are we progressing. So some key highlights, you don't have to know entirely what report says. Some key highlights. SDR 2025 says 0 out of 17 sustainable development goals fully on track globally. None of the 17 goals devised under SDGs are fully on track. Goals: no poverty, zero hunger, education, sanitation and pure drinking water, etc. There are 17 such goals. None of them are fully on track. Next, only 17% of targets are progressing, improving, right? It also talks about the theme of the report is global financial architecture, because it highlights the issue of nearly 50% of the countries lack funds for SDGs. Lacks funds for SDGs. Got it? That is the theme. That is why the theme is global financial architecture. Right. So what about India's performance? India first time is seen within top 100. For the first time, India is seen within top 100, ranked 99. Right. So reasons: digital infrastructure, electricity access, healthcare, etc. Reasons may not be asked in the prelims. Who are the top performers? Nordic countries, as usual. Finland, Sweden, Denmark, Nordic countries. They are consistently performing well in the SDR report. Right. New Country Partnership Framework 2026-31. The framework that is been achieved between World Bank and India. New Country Partnership Framework, that is for next 5 years. So what is it about? It's a strategic framework between India and World Bank, shift from welfare model to productivity led and private sector led growth. Means what? Earlier, what used to happen? World Bank used to sanction some loan for a lesser interest rate, or it also used to give some grants, right? So government used to implement the projects. Under this partnership framework, new country partnership framework, what happens? World Bank provides financial aid. The funding is estimated to be nearly 8 to 10 billion. It also provides loan. It provides funding as a loan for private entities. Now it is focusing on private sector led job creation. Private sector led job creation. Right? It also provides access to technology. It also provides skill improvement, infrastructure, etc. It is not just passively World Bank is going to give you some grants and loans, but also it is going to become strategically involved, right, in developing private sector so that they can create good amount of jobs. Skill development, youth and women employment, etc. Especially targeting micro, small and medium enterprises. Right? So, new country partnership framework focuses on improving ability of private sector to create more jobs. Here, World Bank is not only merely giving loans but also becoming strategically involved, right, for the programs like upskilling, right, and providing better employment opportunities to women, etc., along with the private participants, especially MSME sector. So, New Development Bank is in the news. NDB will always be in the news. You all know it is a BRICS institution. New Development Bank is a BRICS institution. It is in the news for various reasons. in the context of de-dollarization, in the context of replacing the hegemony of World Bank and IMF, etc. So BRICS, you all know the founding partners of the BRICS is Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Headquartered in Shanghai. Right. The bank, NDB bank, headquartered in Shanghai. What is the basic capital? 100 billion. The member countries have contributed equally to this fund. Equal contribution. When you talk about IMF, the contribution is based on the economic potential of every country, right? But NDB, it is equal contribution. Total capital is 100 billion. Since it is equal contribution by every member country enjoys equal voting power. Equal voting power. Main focus of the NDB is providing financial assistance for infrastructure projects as well as sustainable developmental goals. And currently, it's also pursuing its goal in local currency lending and green bonds. Local currency lending to replace the dollar or to reduce the prominence of dollar in the global trade. So, members are continuously getting expanded. New members, you may have to look at all the members of NDB. Currently added new members are Bangladesh, UAE, Egypt, Algeria. Algeria is the latest addition. Why it is in the news? We are celebrating 10th anniversary of New Development Bank. Got it? Land Governance, World Bank Conference and Swamitva. So there is a World Bank conference which was held in USA regarding land governance. So in that conference, India acted as a country champion, right, for its digital land governance models. How India is utilizing digital infrastructure for betterment of land governance. That is why India acted as a country champion in the World Bank Land Conference held in 2025 in USA. It also showcased its GIS, Geographical Indication System, right? Models based land reforms which are recognized as global best practices. India land governance model is based on geographical indication system, right? So that helped India to better govern the land related aspects. In connection to that, we also talk about Swamitva scheme. It can be asked Swamitva scheme. It is also part of digital land governance model. Digital land governance model where drone mapping, GIS land records, where drone mapping, GIS land records, GIS means geographical indication system. Land records means every land record is located geographically along with latitudes and longitudes, right? GIS land records. By doing this, issuance of property cards in villages. So every property will be assessed digitally and to the rightful owners of the property cards will be issued. That's about Swamitva scheme. Got it? So why Swamitva matters? It provides property card to the rightful owners by proper digital assessment using drone, satellite mapping, etc. These property cards helpful for taking loans by keeping them as collateral. Again, it reduces land disputes, also enables proper welfare targeting. Based on property ownership, we can target welfare projects properly. Very important thing to remember is this Swamitva refers to only residential land, rural residential land. Swamitva does drone mapping, GIS location mapping, right, and issue property cards. That is only with respect to rural residential land, not agricultural land. Swamitva digital land governance model with respect to rural residential land. Got it? We have come to the last topic of this discussion, that is Gram Manchitra. It is part of land governance, digital land governance model. Gram Manchitra is geospatial planning tool. Geospatial planning tool. Geospatial means whatever the land resources available in the Gram Panchayat level, that will be planned using geospatial technology, using satellite imageries, right? So for this tool is for gram panchayats, right? Why? For better land mapping, resource mapping, and better planning. Enable better planning. If you map the resources, then you can plan for better utilization of resources, right? So it integrates NREGA, PMGSY, all those schemes. Why? To enable data driven decentralized planning, right? So PM Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana, where the roads have to be built, what is the efficient way to commute between two villages. So this geospatial planning will help the gram panchayats to plan the projects and execute the projects, right? So also helps in mapping flood zones, also mapping resources availability, right? So where they can fetch the water, where they can build the ponds, right? Water ponds, check dams, etc. Got it? So if they can plan resources, then they can invest in resource development. If they can plan the resources, then they can invest in resource development. So for gram panchayat level planning, this gram machitra tool is going to be handy. It is a geospatial tool. It is part of land governance model in India. So why land governance matters and all, this is mains related topic. Why land governance matters? Land governance will reduce the digital land governance will reduce the disputes. It also provide proper property rights, right? So whatever the property right, if for someone's gained proper property right, he can put that as collateral, avail loans, etc. It can also provide land rights for the women. Women are now landless in their own form. They are working as landless laborers. Got it? So they can also avail proper land rights, etc. So that's about why land governance matters. But for prelims perspective, we just want to know what is Gram Manchitra. It is a geospatial tool available for gram panchayats for better planning and resource allocation processes. Those are the topics which we have covered. If I can recall, topics related to infrastructure development, topics related to industry and labor, and topics related to agriculture and some other basic concepts. I hope this video has become very helpful for you, right? So make sure that, right, you watch the previous video as well, episode 1 and this is episode 2, and you can look forward to the final episode. That is, I will cover all the miscellaneous topics which I have left out with regard to economics, current affairs, and I am sure these videos are going to help you at least to answer 2 to 3 current affairs based questions, which is a huge outcome. If you talk about cost benefit ratio, so 7 to 8 hours of video is going to get you get your answers right for 2 to 3 questions. It is going to be a huge cost benefit ratio. Make sure you share this video with your friends. Make sure you also comment below your opinion after watching this video. I hope you enjoyed the video and all the best for your preparation. Thank you very much.